So if you're watching this right now, you're likely wondering how to use all the different Vapi settings. So what I'm going to go through today is exactly that. I'm going to go through all the different Vapi settings, and there's quite a few. There's almost 50, close to 100 different settings that you can actually utilize to organize and prompt your bot correctly. So it says what you want it to say, when you want it to say it, right? And you're probably wondering, who is this random guy? So my name is John Joshin. And I've helped over 50 different companies in a multitude of different industries, ranging from real estate to tree companies to landscaping companies, franchise brokers, and many more industries. And I'm going to go through all of that different stuff. But first, before I jump right into it, I want to advertise our little school community. So we have a couple hundred people in there. We're trying to drop as much information, as much value to everyone as we possibly can. And our YouTube only shows a portion of what we actually provide, because in that school community, we're going to be adding a ton of extra value so that you can use it yourself. The link is right here. You can see the pop-up, and those are the different courses that we have right now, but we're always going to be implementing more. So let's jump right into it. You can see right here, the first thing is the model section. So this model is including a couple different areas. So the first area is the first message. So the first message is what the AI is going to be saying to the customer right away. So that's the very first message, whether it's inbound, whether it's outbound, it's always going to be the exact same. The next part is the system prompt. So this is the prompting of the AI, and I have a separate prompting video to help you understand how to prompt your bots correctly so that it's actually going to say the right things when you want it to say it. That's the two main sections of building a Vapi bot. There's a bunch of backend stuff which I'll kind of get into, but these are the most important parts when you're building your actual bot. After this, we have the provider. So we have like OpenAI, for example. We have Perplexity, Grok, all the different ones. And you can also implement your own custom LLM in there. So for example, if we wanted the OpenAI one, they have all the different models of OpenAI. There's also, for example, the Grok one. We can do a couple different variations of the Grok one. Those are all completely interchangeable, and that's kind of what makes it nice. So the next part is the actual knowledge base. So this is where you put all the extra information, such as maybe objection handles, company information, company policies, different knowledge base. If you're doing like a customer service bot, you're going to want to do all the frequently asked questions. All of that information you want to put in the knowledge base just to save up the actual space in the system prompt, because this cost will go up a lot more if you don't put it in the system prompt. So the next part is the actual temperature. So this is how random the actual AI bot will start talking. I usually keep it 0.5 to 0.7, somewhere in that range, depending on the prompting, depending on the scenario. But this is how random it'll be. So if you put it up to here, it'll be super, super random. Now if you put it a lot lower, like 0.2, it's going to be very, very concise and straight to exactly what you said. The next part is the actual tokens. So this is how many tokens the AI can use for each response or each message back to the AI. The next part is the detect emotion. So this is the emotion that the AI is able to understand. So whether the user is angry, whether they're happy, whether they're surprised, all those different emotions, the AI is now able to understand that and use that in the conversations. The next part after this is the actual transcriber. So this is the transcription, and it allows you to understand and the AI to understand what's actually happening during the conversation. So whether it's in English, whether it's in French, whether it's in Spanish, it's able to understand all those different languages super, super easy. The next part is kind of going into detail about this. So for example, we use Deepagram as the main provider. There's Transcriber, Gladia, there's all the different providers. My personal favorite and what's usually the best is Deepagram, and you just choose exactly what language you need. So they have all the different languages, you can just switch it up and then you're good to go. The next part after this is the actual model. So these are the different models that you can use for these AIs. Most of the time, you're not really going to need to switch it. You just kind of need to keep it at Nova 2. So it makes it really simple. You just keep this selected and you're pretty much always good to go. Now that we've gone through the actual model area and the transcriber area, the next important part is the actual voices. So we need to choose the voice, choose all the different information behind the voice to make sure that it all works properly. So my favorite voices are the 11 Lab voices. They have almost a couple thousand. I think it's like 1,100, 1,200 different voices in the 11 Labs. So if you're just doing English, for example, all you really need is the 11 lab voices. If you need specific multilingual voices, you're going to want to use this one, which is Azure, and it has all the different languages that you may need. So we have like this one, these are all different languages, and you can just switch it up and it's pretty much good to go for every other language that you would need. After this, you can use additional configurations. So this is, for example, the background sounds. So if we want background sounds, we can do off. If we want no background sounds, if we want the office, maybe a small bit of background sound, which is default. Input minimum characters is the minimum number of characters that we paused or passed to the voice provider. And to understand this is just making sure that it's actually analyzing the different conversations and understanding it all correctly. With this, we also have the punctuation boundaries. So this is understanding, hey, these are the different punctuations that are going to be used in the prompting and from the customer. So this will help decipher, hey, this is the end of the conversation, this is the start of it. It just allows the AI to understand the different sections in the conversation a lot better. So this is super, super useful, and I would highly recommend adding those in. The next part is the filler injections. So this is just adding a bunch of like filler words into the AI's responses, and the back channeling, which is like, yeah, this is like responding to the person. So while they're mid-conversation, it just shows that the AI is, in quotes, listening, just like a normal human would do. Because a normal human, if someone's talking to them, they're gonna be like, or yeah, that makes sense. Simple stuff like that. And they're gonna be throwing those words into the conversation to keep it flowing and show that they're actually attentively listening. So that's what the AI is able to do. Throws in the filler words and also throws in this back channeling information. I personally like to keep these off because I think it almost sounds a little bit dumb sometimes if you throw this in. Like, for example, the filler words, it'll say like ums, ands, and I've seen it where a customer will just like call it dumb almost, and it's just saying ums even though it's told to say ums. So we usually like to keep these off for now because it's a little bit too much, but I know for a fact in the future it'll become a lot better. If you really want the ums or different information like that, throw that into your actual prompting and the AI will know to respond correctly in that matter, right? So with that, we also have the background denoising enabled. So this is allowing the AI to understand and separate the background noise to the foreground noise, so it's actually hearing it a lot better. So this is super useful when you have like a really loud background for one of your users, someone that's calling, and it's just like really loud and they can't really understand or you can't really hear them. This will kind of fix all of those issues that will come. With this, we also have like the speed of the AI responding. So it'll talk a lot faster, it'll talk slower. Usually this is very, very sensitive, so you need to be careful when you do change this, but it can be useful with super slow voices or super fast voices for that matter. So the next part of this is the actual functions of the AI. So you want to use functions and you want to use tools when you're building out your AI, because without these, it's almost useless. Because that means it can't check available calendar times. It can't book on the actual calendar. It can't set tasks in high level. Maybe even send emails when you need it to. Can't do any of that extra stuff that you need the AI to do. So that's why adding these different functions are super, super useful. So these are what we call functions or tools. They got turned away and switched away from the actual functions, and they switched it into tools. So tools are the new thing, and you need tools to actually build your bot. So you can just select the tool and it'll act exactly as you need it to. So it's super useful. The next part is the enable end function call tool. So this allows the AI to actually end the call if the call needs to end. So you can give it prompting for this, and you just tell it like, hey, end the call if they're saying certain things, or start the call if they're saying certain things, different stuff like that. So with this one, we have like the dial keypads one. This one's pretty useful, and it allows the assistant to dial digits on the keypad. So for example, if you're calling a law firm and the law firm's IVR system is saying press 1 to get connected to X agent, right? You're gonna wanna have the AI press 1 so it can make that cold call and be transferred to the correct person. So it's super, super useful when you're making cold calls or different outbound systems such as that. The next part after this is the forwarding phone number. So this allows you to forward the phone call to the correct agent or to the correct team, so they can actually split the call. So for example, if you're in a call and you're telling the user, hey, would you like to be transferred to one of our sales reps? And this user actually wants to be transferred, the AI can transfer the call to the correct sales rep during the middle of the conversation, and it'll just transfer it, and then the sales rep can take over, handle the phone call. So this is super useful for like sales, customer support, most of the things inbound, this is super good for. With this, we have the actual end call phrases. So this goes into the end call function. So this is giving the end call function understanding on, hey, you should end the call at this time if they say these words, or if you say these words, it'll end the call. So this will give it like actual triggers, and it'll trigger when certain things are said or certain things are not said. This custom functions is now gone. So these functions used to be the tools, but the functions are gone now, and everything is transitioned over to the actual tools now. Now we are jumping into the actual advanced area. So this advanced section is things like HIPAA compliance. So this will make sure that no logs, no call recordings, transcriptions are stored, so that if you are a HIPAA compliant company, you will stay HIPAA compliant. And this makes sure no laws are changed and you don't actually infringe on customers' rights. So this is super useful. Next part is like audio recording. You almost always want the audio recording on so you can analyze that data, use that data for a bunch of different things, and just make sure that your calls are going okay. After this is video recording. So this is enabling or disabling video recording if it's a web call and it records a video of the user that's talking to the AI. So this is kind of cool, and it can be super useful for a bunch of different scenarios. If we scroll down a little bit, we have like pipeline configuration. So this is like silence timeouts, which is how long to wait before a call is actually ended. So if maybe the user isn't talking, then the AI will just end the conversation just because nobody's talking, and you don't want the AI just to waste minutes, keep talking, and then it's just a useless conversation because nothing was even said. So after that, we have like the response delay. So this is the minimum number of seconds that the assistant waits before it actually starts speaking. So this makes sure that it's actually a legitimate conversation. It doesn't just start interrupting people, or maybe they pause for a second and the AI just doesn't start talking to them right away. So this is pretty useful if you want your AI to actually perform well. After this, we have the LLM response delay. So this is the actual response time of the LLM system. So this is very similar to the response delay, but they kind of go hand in hand if you use them correctly. After this is the interruption threshold. So this is the number of words the user must say before the AI considers being interrupted and will stop talking during the conversation. So let's say, for example, there's some background noise, different stuff like that. The AI might pick it up. You almost want to keep this interruption threshold a little bit higher so that it doesn't just stop talking, start talking, stop talking over and over, and then it's just not a good flow during the conversation. You almost want to make sure that it doesn't stop talking so that it doesn't get interrupted. After this is the maximum duration of number of seconds the call would actually last. So let's say, for example, you don't want the phone calls to be longer than X amount of time frame. It'll just end the call after X amount of time, and you can just maximize it. So let's say your average conversation is 3 minutes. You don't want it to go past 5. You can drop it down. But let's say your average conversation is 20 minutes and you don't want it to go over maybe 30 minutes. You can just raise that maximum duration up so that it matches correctly. Smart endpointing is more accurate speech endpoint detection. So this is just more accurate speech detection, different stuff like that, and it just analyzes it a lot better. So you're most likely going to want it on, but it's not always enabled. After this is the actual server URL. So this is where the Vapi assistant will send all the end of call report data or kind of other data during the conversation. And you can just use this to send all that data through, and you can analyze and track the call during the conversation or even after the conversation. And if you use all of this data correctly, it can be a very good asset to your company. So this is the different information that will actually be sent. So like client messages, for example, we have conversation updates, function calls, results, hang, metadata, speech updates, transcriptions, tool calls, all this different information, and you can send that to your maybe server or different way that you're actually hosting the data, and you can analyze that and send it back to your server, send it back so you can actually analyze it correctly, right? The next part is the server messages. So this is very similar, it gets sent all to that same URL, and this is just all more information that you can utilize during the call to make sure that you're understanding all your calls correctly in a giant large format. So we have like end of call reports, which is almost the most useful one, function calls, hang, phone call control, speech updates, transcriptions, different stuff like that. That's going to be useful to analyze all that data, right? After this, we have voicemail messages. So this is what the AI will say if the call is forwarded to an actual voicemail. And this is just completely custom voicemails. You can put custom fields in here. So for example, if you want to do name, you have a name custom field, you can throw that in there. That'll be super useful. The next part we're going to want is the end call messages. So this is the message that the assistant will say at the end of the phone call. So right before the assistant ends the call on the user, it might say like, hey, thank you for contacting Mary's Dental. Have a great rest of your day. So it's just like a polite way of ending the phone call, and it's super useful if you wanted to kind of show respect to all your different customers. After this is things like idle messages. So messages that the assistant will say when the user hasn't responded. So it'll say like, are you still there? How can I assist you? I'm ready to help whenever you are. So if the user is just going silent or you don't know what's going on, it'll say these preset messages to actually get them back into the flow and bring them back in. So the next thing that we have after this is like max idle messages. So this will kind of limit it. So let's say you want 4 or 5 different idle messages. It'll use these idle messages over and over until, hey, this user is actually just not replying anymore. The conversation's over at this point, right? So with that, we have like idle timeout. So this is the timeout before an idle message or between an idle message. So this is just so like, hey, middle of the conversation, the AI doesn't just say, hey, are you still there? You don't want it to say that because for obvious reasons, it's going to be in the middle of the conversation, and then it's just going to start saying, are you still there? Start talking to me. What's going on? Different stuff like that. And it's like, you don't want this AI to say that because it's pretty much useless and it'll kill the entire flow of the conversation. So you got to put these settings correctly, and if you are using them correctly, it'll be a great asset. The last part of these bots is the actual analysis of the end of the call reports. So for example, we can give it an analysis such as like a summary, and we can prompt that correctly, different stuff like that. So if we want to analyze our summary correctly, we can tell it, hey, you are an expert note taker, you'll be given a transcript summarized in 2 to 3 sentences if applicable, right? And this is just giving you an actual summary of the conversation. So this is super useful if you want to have good analyses of the conversation. So you can do this after the call and you don't have to use this, but this will just save you GPT actions by sending it in here, and Vapi will send it back to your server URL in that advanced section. So all of this information will be sent in that server URL if you use it correctly. So we can also do like success evaluation. So you can check how the call went. So if you want to give it like a 1 through 10 or different scales on how good the conversation was, you can use this and you can do like a pass fail, and then you can analyze all the fails or all the passes, and you can figure out why these conversations or where the conversations dropped off. So this stuff is super useful. The next part is structured data that you want to send out after. So for example, if you have, let's say, maybe some information that's gathered during the call. Let's say you're working with a real estate client and you want to edit and extract structured data from the conversation. So let's say the user is saying, hey, I want 5 bathrooms, 3 bedrooms, I want a pool in my backyard, all this different information. You can send this out and extract it correctly. So you can just send it straight to your server URL, and it's super easy to analyze this information. So you just like add the property, for example, throw it in there. Let's say it's required, let's say it's not required. Most of the time you don't want to throw it as required, otherwise it's going to be giving you random gibberish when it's not actually existing. So if you like this video, drop a comment in this comment section and tell us, hey, you guys need to make a video on this, or you guys should do this. because we're always looking for different information and more value that we can actually provide to anyone watching our content. So drop that into the comments, let us know what we need, and we're happy to help. Have a great rest of your day.